What is poppin' YouTube? You ask, I deliver. Rest of season rankings. Here we go. Starting off with our running backs, we have our high-end running back ones. We got Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara, Travis Etienne, Bijan Robinson, and Jonathan Taylor. Now, we know what CMC is. Absolutely league-winning running back. So then we move to our next two guys. Austin Eckler, this is really a projection that he's going to be getting back on track, getting back to that high-end receiving back that we knew it was. The reason you were drafting him, the discussion between Austin Eckler, Bijan Robinson early on the season, I think Austin Eckler cements it for you. So you have Austin Eckler. I promise you, bigger and better days are still ahead. Alvin Kamara, absolutely league winner where you drafted him. You waited 3 weeks, and my man has come out and been an absolute PPR machine. No reason to think that stops. So especially in PPR, I have Alvin Kamara here. You might be able to debate Alvin Kamara versus Travis Etienne if it's half PPR, but I have Alvin Kamara over Travis Etienne. Even though Travis Etienne's been absolutely fantastic this season for the Jacksonville Jaguars, really, Trevor Lawrence has kind of struggled. Calvin Ridley has struggled, but Travis Etienne has been super secure this season. We then move to Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson, really, this is another projection. We just assume that Arthur Smith is going to continue to get Bijan Robinson more and more involved because honestly, if you look at it, Bijan Robinson might be the most talented running back currently right now in the NFL, and that hasn't translated to fantasy football production, but we do like Bijan Robinson the rest of the season. Then ending with Jonathan Taylor, we know who Jonathan Taylor is. So honestly, there could be a team that has Jonathan Taylor and Alvin Kamara. They waited for 3 or 4 weeks, and now they have two high-end RB1s because they waited with a ton of wide receiver depth, like Jonathan Taylor rest of the season as a high-end running back one. We then move to our lower running back ones. We then have DeAndre Swift, Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, Kenneth Walker. Then we have Devon Achane. The thing that we have to understand with DeAndre Swift, he could have potentially been in that high-end RB1, but I think between DeAndre Swift, Bijan, and Jonathan Taylor, really for me it was upside. And yes, I think DeAndre Swift is still a league winner where you drafted him, but I just have DeAndre Swift here as my RB7 for the rest of the season. Then we go to Breece Hall, who a lot of people were worried about Breece Hall early in the season, but he silenced all those doubts coming back from an ACL with that elite level speed, with that volume. Have Breece Hall here. Saquon Barkley, we would have loved to push Saquon Barkley higher, but this Giants offense just hasn't been good enough for us to really consider Saquon Barkley any higher. Tony Pollard, this is more of a projection. This is more of an upside play rest of the season. We talked about him in a trade video yesterday where we said things aren't looking great for Tony Pollard, but the volume is there. So we are following the volume, know the talent, know this offense is going to get better with Tony Pollard here. Then we got Kenneth Walker, Devon. We don't need to harp on them. Both of those guys, really good guys. Devon could potentially be a league winner if he comes back from this knee injury. Then move to our high-end RB2s. We got David Montgomery, Raheem Mostert, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Kyron Williams. Pretty much you could flip any of these guys in this tier however you see it. David Montgomery, we know that elite level touchdown upside. Assuming once he comes back from injury off this bye, we assume David Montgomery continues to get high-end workload. What are those splits going to look like with Jahmyr Gibbs? Real question. Raheem Mostert, same exact question. He's going to be going back into a committee. Hopefully you've enjoyed this high-end RB1 upside. If it was just him, he would be a high-end RB1, but since we know the situation isn't like that, we can't do that to him. Josh Jacobs, situation's a little unclear. Week in and week out, it's been a little bit rough. So Josh Jacobs there. Derrick Henry, he had a great night on Thursday night. Will Levis as the quarterback. We like that for Derrick Henry. It doesn't seem like this Titans offensive line is good enough to really be supplanting Derrick Henry as a high-end RB1, so he's going to be an RB2. Joe Mixon, volume play, and then of course Kyron Williams as well. Once he comes back from injury, we assume he's still going to be getting that same level of volume. Moving on to our lower end RB2s, we got Jahmyr Gibbs, Isaiah Pacheco, Aaron Jones, Brian Robinson, James Cook, and Rachaad White. Jahmyr Gibbs, we talked about him as a trade video. We said really you should be trading for someone in the RB12 to 15 range. Well, that is still where I have Jahmyr Gibbs because I think Jahmyr Gibbs upside, we've seen that elite level game breaking type speed and upside that he does have on a week-to-week basis. So if something were to happen to Monty, Jahmyr Gibbs instantly rest of the season would fly into the low end RB1s, maybe even the high end RB1s because he is super talented. He's as talented as those guys in the high end RB1s. He's just not getting the workload. Isaiah Pacheco, Aaron Jones, Brian Robinson has been all volume. James Cook, we're a little bit more worried about James Cook when Lenny Fournette back, but he has been super great in those metrics, so we got to keep him right here. And then Rachaad White, PPR monster. We then move to our flex plays, and we got James Conner, Gus Edwards, Javonte Williams, Ramondre Stevenson, and Jerome Ford. James Conner, I think the volume's going to be good, especially with Kyler Murray coming back. So here's the full list of my rest of the season running backs. Moving on to our wide receivers, we have elite level wide receiver ones. We got Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs. I would have loved to add some more guys too. I think there were some guys in the solid wide receiver ones tier that I could have bumped up here, but you guys know these guys are locked and loaded in your lineup as the wide receiver ones. Solid wide receiver ones. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle. Yes, Devontae Adams is still a solid wide receiver one for me based on talent and based on some of these other wide receivers below him. I know their situations might be slightly better. I just couldn't push him up over the talent that Devontae Adams is because we've seen Devontae Adams, as much as the situation sucks, we've seen him be able to make it out of different type of situations. We then move to our high and wide receiver twos. We got Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, Mike Evans, DJ Moore, are Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Now, Justin Jefferson right now as a high-end wide receiver 2, we don't know if he's coming back. So that's why I still have him here in my high-end wide receiver 2s. Might be a great trade target for you to go consider. All these guys, we got different question marks with all these guys. Chris Olave with the production, even though he has the volume. Garrett Wilson has the production, but not necessarily the volume. Wide receiver 15 on expected fantasy points. He's not there yet. Devontae Smith has been a roller coaster. Mike Evans, it's kind of been the same type of roller coaster season for Mike Evans, but he's still putting up really solid points. PJ Moore, when is Justin Fields going to come back? Adam Thielen's probably the most secure out of these high-end wide receiver 2s, but I just don't think the talent is there compared to the other guys. And then, of course, Justin Jefferson. We move on to our wide receiver 2s, and we got Nico Collins, Jordan Addison, Jacoby Myers, Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, Michael Pittman, Deontay Johnson. After last night's game, maybe I should have put Deontay Johnson a little bit higher, but I love the target share here. Michael Pittman continuing to do Michael Pittman things on the Colts offense. Calvin Ridley, rest of the season, I think he's going to be a wide receiver 2. Christian Kirk, we could have potentially put Christian Kirk as a high-end wide receiver 2. I just think that the splits between Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk, it's a little too hard for me to push Christian Kirk up in these rankings. Jacoby Myers, we've seen what he is. Still worried about this Raiders offense. Jordan Addison, same thing. Without Kirk Cousins, what is it going to look like with Josh Dobbs? And then Nico Collins, like that here. Moving on to our wide receiver 3s, we have Deebo Samuel, George Pickens, Zay Flowers, Hollywood, T. Higgins, Amari Cooper, DK Metcalf, Josh Downs, Chris Godwin. Now, when we look at this tier, these guys, there's a lot of talented players, and there's a lot of talented players that on a week-to-week basis are going to be doing better than their counterparts in the wide receiver 2s, high-end wide receiver 2s, even potentially solid wide receiver 1s. The thing with me is these guys are lacking consistency that some of these other players above them are. DK Metcalf, great buy low opportunity. T. Higgins hasn't done anything. We're banking on talent. Hollywood Brown, we're assuming with Kyler Murray coming back, Hollywood Brown could definitely skyrocket up these rankings. George Pickens got out-targeted by Deontay Johnson. Deebo Samuel's been injured, but Brandon Ayuk has passed him on the depth chart. A lot of question marks here, but all these guys are solid wide receiver 3s, so they're going to be in your starting lineup each and every week. So if you have a wide receiver 3, don't be panicking, especially if it is your wide receiver 2. These guys are solid. And then we move to our flex plays. We got DeAndre Hopkins, Rashee Rice, Terry McLaurin, Drake London, Tank Dell, Josh Palmer, Christian Watson. Yes, there's a ton more guys I could have added to this flex tier, but that is where I wanted to end it here. And so here are my wide receiver rankings rest of season. Of course, this could change this week if an injury happens, if something crazy were to happen, but this is where I currently evaluate them before week 9 fantasy football. Moving on to our elite level tight ends, we have Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, TJ Hawkinson. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I still have TJ Hawkinson as an elite level tight end, even with Josh Dobbs. We then move to our every week starters. We have George Kittle, Dalton Kincaid, Evan Ingram, Dallas Goedert, and Darren Waller. I know Darren Waller is not going to play this week, but in this range, we got a lot of question marks. George Kittle, yes, he just had a few boom weeks. We have seen with George Kittle, he does have big weeks, he does have low weeks, so you got to ride the wave. Dalton Kincaid has started to pick things up recently, so we will have him here leading off after kind of the big 5. We then have Evan Ingram, who's been having very solid fantasy football season, like we kind of all were expecting. So if you drafted Evan Ingram in the 7th, you're definitely loving it. Dallas Goedert and then Darren Waller, both based on talent. Dallas Goedert's just playing an amazing offense where it's hard for him to get weekly target. Darren Waller, same thing. The offense has been struggling, but at the same time, Darren Waller is better than all these guys in the upside tier. We got Kyle Pitts, Michael Mayer, David Njoku, and Trey McBride. Trey McBride flashed for the first time 2 weeks ago. We're excited to see that continue to flash, but it's too hard for me to move Trey McBride into an every week starter. David Njoku burns on his face. Deshaun Watson hasn't been playing, and Deshaun Watson and David Njoku have a really good connection. So maybe with Deshaun Watson coming back, they can get it going again. Michael Mayer has slowly started to emerge, so I like the upside there. And then Kyle Pitts, ultimate man of upside. Will that ever show out? Will that ever turn into actual fantasy football production? I hope so. I really hope so for Kyle Pitts, but I don't know if it's going to be this season. We then move to all I have. The whole I have sections: Dalton Schultz, Luke Musgrave, Gerald Everett, Kate Otten, Cole Kmet, even Hunter Henry would be a guy in this range. You're just throwing him in there if you have no better option at tight end, but those are my rest of season tight end rankings. And then rounding us out with our rest of season rankings is going to be our quarterback rankings. We have our elite tier. We have Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes. Now with this tier, you could move him around however you want. I know Patrick Mahomes being 3rd feels wrong. Like I want to put Patrick Mahomes ahead of Jalen Hurts. I just feel like rest of season, you almost have to put Jalen Hurts in his upside above where Patrick Mahomes has been. Of course, Patrick Mahomes is having a very solid fantasy football season. It just hasn't been the most elite fantasy football season we've seen for him up to this point. Then we're moving on to our every week QB1s. We got Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, and Justin Herbert. Now, depending on how you view these guys, you could definitely have them mix and match however you please. I just like Lamar Jackson's upside. We've seen it the last few weeks. And then like last week, he puts up under 15 fantasy points. So you're going to have to ride the waves with Lamar Jackson. But when it's elite, it's absolutely elite. Joe Burrow is starting to cook again. Tua and Tyreek are on the same page. And then Justin Herbert. Been a little bit disappointing if you drafted Justin Herbert. I still have him as an every week QB1 because you're not going to bench him. Then we move on to our lower end QB1s. And we got Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, CJ Stroud, and Dak Prescott. This tier to me is where if I have one of these guys, I'm really trying to leverage a trade to get to an every week QB1 because I just feel like you're missing out on a ton of points per game, as well as just the fluctuation of a week to week. CJ Stroud a few weeks ago was balling. It's been a little bit quieter here the last few weeks. Dak Prescott, I started to pick things up where it probably has bumped him up into the lower end QB1 tier. Trevor Lawrence has been disappointing. Brock Purdy's been disappointing the last few weeks. Jared Goff has been pretty meh the last few weeks. So for me, this tier, you're starting these guys based on matchup, based on who you have at quarterback, but they're my lower end QB1s. And then moving on to our streamers, we have Justin Fields, Kyler Murray, Sam Howell, Will Levis. Yes, Justin Fields and Kyler Murray arguably could be in that lower end QB1 tier. Justin Fields, we need to see what he looks like when he comes back from this thumb injury. That's why I have him as a streamer. Kyler Murray, we need to see him coming off that ACL, because I don't want to tell you, go, Kyler Murray's ahead of Brock Purdy, and then all of a sudden Kyler Murray can't even run out there. Those are all question marks that I have with those two guys, but I think they definitely could help you if you're struggling in the quarterback department. And Sam Howell, he's been having a pretty good season so far, but I just can't put him ahead of any of these other guys based on the offense, based on the situation, based on his weapons. And then shout out to Will Levis for making it here in my streamers. I love some Will Levis. I know he didn't have the most amazing fantasy football game this week, but the thing with Will Levis is we're seeing the progression. We're seeing that strong arm that he has. He's able to sling the rock all over the field. So we like Will Levis. Definitely consider Will Levis if you need a streamer. So that's my rest of season rankings. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're new, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.